Hey, what's up, fellas? How you doing, man? Antonelli here.
Hey, what's going on, everyone? How we doing? Matt Antonelli here. So, some more news with minor leaguers. I know this is a rough time right now for minor leaguers, and it seems like every little bit of news that's coming out is making baseball, especially the owners, look bad recently. And so we've got some more today, and I want to delve into this because a lot of people have been asking me my opinion on this, and a lot of people are upset about this. And so I want to give my perspective because I don't know if this is as big of a deal as everyone's making it out to be. I'm not saying it's not a big deal, but I don't think it's as big of a deal. But let's get into exactly what happened. So lots and lots and lots of minor leaguers have lost their job. They got released yesterday. Okay, so most teams went through and just started firing a bunch of their minor league players. Okay, releasing them. When fire release, it's all the same thing. Okay. And so let's get into some of these tweets. My boy Jeff Passan from ESPN. I actually don't know him, but he seems like a cool guy. And guy never sleeps. He's always on top of everything. And so I want to look at some of the tweets real quick. And then Ken Rosenthal from The Athletic. He tweeted something also. And so I want to go through these tweets, and then I want to give you my perspective on this. So first, right here, Jeff Passan, he said, across baseball, hundreds of minor league players were cut today and lost their jobs, sources tell ESPN. Hundreds more will be released over the next week. In the end, upward of 1,000 players could see their baseball careers end. The minor leagues have simply been devastated. In normal years, cuts happen, but not en masse like this. The fallout from the coronavirus, expected minor league contraction, and the anticipated cancellation of the 2020 minor league season prompted organizations each to release dozens of players who were being paid $400 a week. And then Ken Rosenthal tweeted out, many minor leaguers released today would have suffered the same fate at the end of spring training, but with transactions frozen and minor league season likely to be canceled, these players have practically nowhere to turn, at least in 2020, and many are not in position to stick around until 2021. Okay, so let's get into this real quick. I'm just going to scroll down here. I've got a bunch of notes on some of the things that I want to talk about. The first thing is, let's start with this. This really stinks for minor league players, right? To be released is really, really tough. And I've been released during my career. I was released multiple times. I can't even think of how many times. Basically, I was with 5 different teams, and every team let me go. They weren't all considered releases, but basically, you can call it non-tendered release, whatever. Basically, I was released from pretty much all 5 of my organizations, okay? And then the final time that I was released in 2013, that's the last time I ever wore a baseball uniform. And so I have a pretty good idea what these players are going through, right? For most of these players, I know for me, and in my experience, it's pretty much like this across the board. Since I was 5 years old, I started playing baseball when I was 5 years old, pretty much, in T-ball. And I would say pretty young in my life, Little League, I wanted to play in the major leagues, right? And so I dedicated most of my life to being a baseball player, especially when I get into high school and then in college and then pro ball when it becomes your job. Like I dedicate every day. Like when I wake up, I think like, how can I get better to reach the major leagues? And when I go to bed, I think, okay, what am I going to do tomorrow to try to reach the major leagues? Like that's the mindset of most players that are trying to get to that level and be the best players in the world. And so for all of a sudden, when your career is just, boom, done, right? And I'm not saying all these guys' careers are done, but a lot of them, their careers are going to be done. Like this might be the last time they ever put on a baseball uniform. It is a bizarre, bizarre feeling to have all of a sudden your career just chopped off and you're like, okay, I've done this for the last 20 years, 25 years. What the hell do I do now? Okay, so this is a tough position. It is not a good time for most major league play or for most professional players. Okay, now the second thing is that there's been a lot of people, right? There's been a lot of bad news with minor leaguers and pay, right? We've had the Oakland A's say that they're no longer paying their players once we get into June. And so a lot of people have been on the owners, right? They've been calling them cheap. These billionaires can't afford to pay $1 million to the minor leaguers to give them $400 a week for the rest of the season, right? So there's been a lot of publicity, and so the public right now is like out with their pitchforks, and everything is really anti-MLB and anti-owners right now. Now, a couple of things to keep in mind, right? And I know this doesn't make it any better for these players, but you do have to keep in mind that players, typically at the end of spring training, and Rosenthal brought this up, typically at the end of spring training, players get released. Like a lot of players get released. And so, rosters were frozen. A lot of these guys that are getting released were probably going to get released at the end of spring training, but they just couldn't get released because there was no end of spring training, right? And I got the call in. I remember vividly. I've talked about this on our channel. I got the call in when I was the Indians, and when I was with the Indians in 2013, my last year, they were essentially going to release me. And they said, like, you can get released now, or you can go on the Phantom DL, which is like basically just pretend. Well, you're basically going to pretend you're hurt, and we'll keep you around, but you're probably not going to play much. And so I chose to do that because I wanted to keep playing. But I got that call into the office. It was like, you get called in a couple days before spring training is over. And usually, for most players, it's like, okay, you're released. For me, they gave me the option, and I took the option and played for another month, and then I got released. Okay, so again, this happens at the end of spring training usually, and it couldn't happen then, so it's happened now. The second thing is the draft is coming up here, in a week? And so usually right around this time, more players do get released because there's going to be an influx of new players coming in. Now, this year is going to be a little different because there's only 5 rounds to the draft. Usually there's 40 rounds, right? So there's only 5 rounds. So I don't know how much of this is actually because of the draft. I don't think very much of it is at all, but who knows? Maybe a guy here and there. And so I think it's a combination of a lot of things. It's the combination of those things. And then also, like Rosenthal said, there isn't going to be a minor league season this year. It's looking like there's not. They are talking contraction of minor league teams. And then you've got the normal releasing of players. So does it stink? Yes. Is it as bad? Is it, again, is it just the owners being like, let's just save some money? I mean, some of it might be to save a little bit of money, but I don't know if it's not completely all just let's release these guys so we can save money. Now, the other question I've gotten a lot is people are saying, like, what are they doing? They're releasing prospects. Like, why are we releasing our minor league players? Keep in mind, in my opinion, they're not releasing prospects. Like, I don't think anyone is releasing any prospects, especially top prospects here. It's not happening. A lot of these guys, in my opinion, will probably, like, their chances of making the major leagues are probably really, really low. Now, could 1 or 2 of them make it? Like, yes, potentially. Anyone, if you're playing professional baseball, you've got a chance to make the major leagues. But in my opinion, like, there's a lot of players in the minor leagues that don't have a chance to make the major leagues, or have like such a tiny chance, like they basically don't have a chance. Some guys in the minor leagues are basically, I don't know what you want to call them. They're like fillers. They fill in, right? Because you're not going to have all prospects in the minor leagues. So you have your prospects and stuff, and then you're going to have some guys that, you need a team. You need a full team. And so these guys, they're professional players. They're good players, right? They're some of the best in the world, yes. But they're probably not anywhere close to good enough to get to the major leagues. And so they just kind of fill in the rosters. And then these are the guys that often, their careers are very short. They come in, they play for a little bit, they get released, right? There's lots of guys. I play with tons of guys. If I think about my first year when I got drafted and the team I played with, by the next year, half those guys were gone. I never saw them ever again, right? And so, and I could tell when I played there, like when I played in that first short season, there were some guys that I was like, oh, this guy isn't very good. Now, again, they're very good players, but like compared to, what you think of as far as guys being able to make to the major leagues, I could tell watching some guys like this guy probably doesn't ever have a shot. I mean, I could barely get to the major leagues, and that was a first-round pick. And so there are a lot of guys that you're like, well, this guy isn't like the greatest player in the world. He probably isn't going to make it. Lastly, I want to say, as much as it does stink for some of these guys, and some of these guys are not going to, this might be the end for them. Some of these guys will be able to jump on with other teams potentially, right? So maybe they're on a team. They're not valued by that team, valued for whatever reason by the team, but maybe now they're able to jump to another team. Maybe somebody else saw them and said, you know what, I really like this guy. Again, there's not going to be a whole lot of teams looking for additional players this year because there's probably no minor leagues, but maybe they have a chance to jump on with another organization, and that organization values them more than the previous organizations. So that is a possible opportunity. The other thing is, for a lot of these guys, they're going to get started in the real world now, right? And so, instead of just kind of hanging around and not knowing what the hell to do, maybe they say, you know what, I gave it my all. I'm not going to make it, and so I'm going to go do something else. So they're able to transition. Now, some of these guys, a lot of people have been, this is kind of not funny, but a lot of people have been saying, well, at least they can collect unemployment now, and they're gonna make more money with unemployment than they would have playing in a minor league season, which is true, because minor league pay is so bad that they will be getting paid more by collecting unemployment. So kind of the final thought is, as much as this stinks, again, I don't want to downplay how much this stinks for players being released, right? And a lot of them, their dreams have kind of been ended. Not all of them, but a lot of these guys probably. But I don't think that this is like let's scream and yell at the owners for being cheap again. There's been some things like the Oakland A's. I thought that was pretty messed up what they've done. But I don't think that this is like Major League Baseball is. A lot of people are like, baseball is ruined. They're releasing their minor leaguers. Baseball's all over. What's the future of the sport? I think that's probably a little bit of an overreaction from certain fans. So. Again, I could be wrong. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. Give the thumbs up. Share the video with all your friends. Hit the notification bell. Thank you to our patrons on Patreon for supporting the channel. That's all we have. We'll talk to you later.